Alright, let's rip off the band-aid. The new live-action How to Train Your Dragon is here, and it's not as bad as you might think. Now, it's not an essential remake, but it does enhance the flavor of the original in some surprising ways. As someone who's loved How to Train Your Dragon since childhood, because of its incredible music, unforgettable characters, sharp humor, and emotionally strong story, I found this remake to be respectable, which, frankly, is high praise in a world where remakes often feel like soulless, greedy cash grabs. Looking at you, Disney! If you somehow managed to avoid How to Train Your Dragon all these years, wow, congrats. Spoiler warning, I guess. For the rest of us who've watched it approximately 3,472 times, buckle up. In this video, I'll do a deep dive into how the music shaped the emotion of the film, whether the CGI actually did Toothless justice, and why this remake not be as heartless as we feared. It might not be groundbreaking, but it did make me feel something, and not just from nostalgia. Let me preface this whole breakdown by saying I thoroughly enjoyed it, but let's be clear, nothing will ever beat the animated version of How to Train Your Dragon. Nothing. That movie is just masterclass. And at the core of it all, it's the music. John Powell composed one of the most perfect scores ever for an animated film. No notes. Untouchable. So let's start there with the soundtrack and what it tells us about how much or how little heart this remake actually has. Music. This movie is about 27 minutes longer than the original, which somehow results in 34 minutes of John Powell music. Magic? Maybe, but it might just be how good John Powell is. And let's be honest, when we heard there would be new music, most of us felt a tiny pang of fear. Would they try to modernize it? Add a pop ballad? Auto-tune Toothless? But DreamWorks made the right call. They brought back John Powell, the man behind some of the most iconic and emotionally rich scores in animated film history. That decision alone instantly forgives almost anything else they could have fumbled. The music remains entirely faithful to the original, almost to a fault. If you were hoping for bold new musical themes, you won't find it here. What you will find is a deeply refined continuation of what already worked flawlessly. That said, a little variety wouldn't have hurt. The orchestration is still sweeping and heroic, but sometimes feels like a retread of 2010. Safe, familiar, and maybe a bit too comfortable. You won't be humming a brand new melody walking out of the theater. But then again, who's complaining that the test drive and romantic flight motifs are back? And let's talk about those soundtrack titles. You can tell Powell had fun here. Original, this is Burke. New, this is really Burke. Original, Forbidden Friendship. New, a really forbidden friendship. What's next? This is really absolutely Burke, for sure, no cap. Or, like, seriously, this friendship is absolutely forbidden. Jokes aside, the man knows what he's doing. Powell's score doesn't just carry the film, it elevates it. There are moments when the music becomes the emotional core, especially in this one moment that we'll talk about later. When Hiccup falls in the final battle and Stoic is left in a stunned silence, the soundtrack does more than just set the tone. It rips your heart out, respectfully. The slow burning theme, the reverent organ, the restrained brass and strings, and then the choir. It doesn't just sound like a funeral, it feels like you're actually attending one. And for a moment, you're not watching a kid's movie. You're watching something that hurts in the best possible way. John Powell remains the undisputed king. Even if the score plays it a little safe, it still hits harder than most composers can dream of. CGI. That's a word that scares everyone nowadays. It can be good, it can be bad, and it can be really bad. Scorpion King. But in this movie, they nailed it. Sure, there may be 2 or 3 scenes where the green screen stands out just a little bit too much, a background that looks a little too flat here, a lighting mismatch here, but overall, it's an incredible feat. The realism they achieved was nothing short of magic. Interacting with fake props is hard enough, but interacting with fully fake creatures? That's basically acting school on nightmare mode. And somehow, they made it work really well. There wasn't a single dragon scene that pulled me out of the movie. I mean, if you showed this to an uncontacted triad, they might start combing the skies for dragons. It's that convincing. There are entire sequences where my jaw is basically in my lap. The sweeping background environments, the village, the overwhelming size of the dragon nest. It all felt tangible, like you could walk into the screen and be there. And a lot of that immersion comes down to lighting. Whoever handled lighting direction on this film deserves their own Oscar. Every frame felt like it existed in real space. Even if we knew it was mostly visual effects, it didn't feel like it. And credit where it's due, the actors sold it. Mason Thames as Hiccup had an especially difficult job. Act opposite a creature that doesn't exist, that fans already love and make us believe it's real. Imagine standing on set, feeding a tennis ball on a stick, pretending that it's your dragon best friend. That's pressure. That's a career-defining type of challenge. And he pulled it off. I believed in his bond with Toothless, and that's the heart of the movie. Yes, it takes a moment to adjust to the new faces. These aren't the animated versions that we've grown attached to over the last decade and a half. But once you settle in, it works. The human characters feel like real-world echoes of the ones we already know. And they're brought to life through months, no, years of careful work, both in performance and post-production. And then there's Toothless. Oh man, he is still so adorable. All those tiny expressions, the eye darts, the snorts, the subtle head tilts, they're all there. They might not be identical to his animated counterpart, but the heart is the same. I honestly have zero complaints about his design. You can tell the VFX team treated him with reverence, and it shows. So yes, is it a little ironic that a film that was once 100% animation is now like 80% animation? Sure, but honestly, I'll take it. This 80% feels better. Sharper, more textured, more real. 16 years of tech improvements gave us something really special. The question now is, in 16 years, how are we gonna top this? Maybe you don't. A remake with soul. Let's be real. Disney remakes recently have been rough. Like, objectively bad. Lilo and Stitch completely missed the actual heart of the story. The Little Mermaid? Yeah, I think we all could have gone without Scuttlebutt. And Cinderella? Okay, fine. That one wasn't terrible. But overall, it feels like Disney is just checking boxes. Emotion? Nah. Effort? Optional. So when DreamWorks announced their first live-action remake, expectations weren't high. But they actually pulled it off. No, not perfectly, but way better than anyone expected. And the main reason? Dean DeBlua. Dean directed the original How to Train Your Dragon, and thankfully he came back for this one too. When asked why, he basically said, I didn't want to see someone else butcher it, so I decided I might as well be the one to destroy it myself. And honestly, respect. At least he understood the risk. And yeah, maybe the way he avoided the risk was by not really changing anything. It's the same story, same characters, same music more or less, but that's probably what saved it, because it still feels like How to Train Your Dragon. It's familiar, maybe too familiar, but for fans of the original, it hits all the right notes. Well, almost all of them. Now once again, is it better than the animated version? Absolutely not. It's not trying to be. Animated movies can squeeze more into one eye twitch than live-action actors can squeeze into a full paragraph. But even with that in mind, the live-action version didn't feel sluggish at all. In fact, the pacing was actually really solid, which is saying something, considering how easily remakes tend to drag when they try to be epic. And that pacing especially worked in one scene, the Hiccup almost dies moment. In the original, it was pretty quick. Emotional, yeah, but kind of rushed through. It's a kid's movie after all, but here, they give it space. You actually sit with it. Stoic finally realizing his son was right, that he might actually lose him before ever getting to connect with him how he wanted to. Astrid realizing how much she loves Hiccup, but not knowing if she'll ever be able to say that. It's raw, it's quiet, and it absolutely works. You could feel the entire theater hold its breath. No music overpowering it, no over-the-top drama, just characters processing grief in a way that felt, honestly, real and way more emotional than I expected it to be. That's when I started to notice how much care actually went into this movie. It's not just a soulless cash grab, or at least it doesn't feel like one. The people behind it clearly put in the time, the effort, the emotional weight. You can tell they loved the original and didn't want to mess it up. And maybe they didn't add anything groundbreaking, but they also didn't ruin it. And these days is kind of a win. So yeah, somehow this remake has something a lot of others don't. A little bit of soul. So where does that leave us? This remake didn't ruin anything, it's not better than the original, and it really doesn't bring anything new to the table. The story is the same, beat for beat. No big twists, no wild reinventions, just a faithful retelling of a movie we already know by heart. And that does change how it feels to watch. There's no mystery, no what happens next. Just a quiet sort of recognition as each scene arrives right on schedule. You're not on the edge of your seat, you're just nodding along, waiting for the parts you already love. And yeah, sometimes that makes it feel more like a tribute than a new experience. But weirdly, that's what kind of works about it, because this isn't trying to be a better version of How to Train Your Dragon. It's trying to remind you why it was great in the first place. The music still hits, the bond between Hiccup and Toothless still feels real, and the emotion still there, maybe even deeper in a few moments, because you know what's coming and it still hurts. So no, it's not groundbreaking, and it's not a necessary movie, but it is sincere, and that's more you can say for most remakes right now. It's not a new story, just a familiar one told with care, and sometimes that's enough.